Welcome to Alien Whisper, where sizzling hot alien women and emotional sci-fi alien stories await you. If you enjoy thrilling adventures between humans and extraterrestrial beings, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below the video. Now, let's dive into the story. Elias Crane stepped off the shuttle, his boots clanging against the metal floor of the docking bay. The air was cool and sterile, a stark contrast to the humid atmosphere of Earth. He took a deep breath, trying to get used to the artificial gravity and the faint hum of the station's life support systems. Argyros was a marvel of engineering, a massive orbital station where different species came together for diplomacy and trade. Its sleek, metallic corridors stretched out in every direction, lined with holographic displays and small robots zipping past, carrying supplies or messages. As Elias walked through the docking bay, he noticed the variety of beings around him. There were humans like him, but also Elari with their tall, slender frames and shiny armor, Zoltari with their scaly skin, and even a few Vexans, their tentacles moving gracefully as they passed. The station was busy, with diplomats, traders, and travelers from across the galaxy all in one place. It was both amazing and a bit scary. Elias adjusted his uniform, making sure his diplomatic badge was visible. He was here to negotiate a trade deal with the Elari, a species known for their advanced tech and mysterious ways. The Elari were hard to deal with. They valued silence and precision, often using gestures and subtle looks instead of words, which most humans found hard to understand. Elias had read about them on the trip here, but he knew no amount of reading could fully prepare him for the real thing. As he headed to the human delegation's quarters, Elias felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. This was his first big job as the lead negotiator, and he wanted to do well. He had always liked the challenge of connecting different cultures, but the Elari were a whole new level. Their reputation for being hard to read and strict made him anxious, but he was determined to succeed. When he reached the quarters, Kin, his second-in-command and a seasoned diplomat who had worked with the Elari before, greeted him. Kian was a wiry guy with a sharp sense of humor and a talent for reading people, at least human people. He shook Elias's hand firmly. "Welcome to Argyros, Elias," Kian said, with a hint of a smile. "How was the trip?" "Long," Elias replied, rubbing his neck. "But I'm here now. So what's the plan?" Kian led him to a briefing room, where a holographic map of the station was displayed. The map showed different areas, like the diplomatic wing, trade hubs, and living quarters. "The Elari delegation is already here," Kian said, pointing to a section. "They're in the main conference room, probably meditating or something. They're big on that." Elias chuckled. "Meditating? During a diplomatic mission?" Kian shrugged. "That's the Elari for you. They believe in keeping calm inside to achieve harmony outside. It's part of their culture." "All right, so what do I need to know?" Elias asked, sitting down at the table. "Well, first, don't expect them to talk much," Kian said, leaning back. "The Elari are known for their silence. They use body language and sometimes their AI translators, but even then, they're very brief." Elias nodded. "Got it. So, I need to be patient and watch closely." "Exactly," Kian said. "Also, be careful with compliments. The Elari have a very specific way of interpreting words, especially about personal things." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Personal things? Like what?" "Like their appearance," Kian explained. "For example, saying something about someone's eyes might mean something deep in their culture, like respect or something else." Elias made a mental note. "I'll keep that in mind. Anything else?" "Yes, the Elari are very formal," Kian continued. "Address them by their titles, and don't make sudden moves. They might think it's aggressive." Elias sighed. "This is going to be tough." Kian patted him on the back. "You'll do fine. Just remember, you're here to negotiate a trade deal, not to make friends." Elias smiled. "Right, but it wouldn't hurt to build some connection." Kian laughed. "With Elari? Good luck with that." After the briefing, Elias took a moment to look out the observation window at the vastness of space. The stars twinkled like diamonds against the black sky, and in the distance he could see the gas giant Targil 7, its golden storms swirling majestically. He thought about how far he had come from his small town on Earth, where the biggest excitement was the annual harvest festival. Now, here he was, on an orbital station, about to negotiate with an alien species. It was surreal, but also thrilling. Elias knew this mission was crucial for humanity. The trade deal with the Elari could bring new tech and resources to Earth, benefiting everyone. But he also knew one wrong move could ruin everything. Taking a deep breath, he steeled himself for what was to come. He was ready. Little did he know that his first meeting with the Elari would be anything but ordinary. The conference room was colder than Elias expected, like stepping into a freezer with fancy lighting. The walls were smooth, metallic, and gleamed under bright white lights that made everything feel sterile. A crescent-shaped table sat in the center, made of some shiny, see-through material that looked like it belonged in a museum. Elias adjusted his tie, trying to look confident as he took his seat with the human delegation. Across the table, the Elari sat perfectly still, their polished armor reflecting the light like mirrors. There were 5 Elari, each one tall and slender, their faces hidden behind sleek helmets. Elias had read that the helmets weren't just for show. They were packed with tech like sensors and translators. But it was hard to focus on that when they didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink, at least not that he could tell. It was like sitting across from statues, and it made Elias's skin crawl just a little. Kian leaned over and whispered, "Told you they're intense. Don't stare too long." Elias nodded, keeping his eyes on the table. "Got it. No staring. Anything else?" "Don't talk unless Ambassador Corvin gives you the signal," Kian said. "He's leading this one." Ambassador Corvin, a stern man with a face like a grumpy bulldog, stood at the head of the human side. He cleared his throat and launched into a speech about trade routes, resource sharing, and mutual benefits. His voice droned on, and Elias struggled to stay focused. He'd been to enough diplomatic meetings to know they were mostly boring. Lots of big words and not much action. But this one felt different. The Elari's silence was heavy, like it carried a hidden meaning. As Corvin talked, Elias's gaze wandered to the Elari delegation. One figure stood out, seated slightly apart from the others. Her armor was darker, etched with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly, like stars caught in a net. She was tall, her posture perfect, and the way her armor hugged her frame was striking, strong yet graceful, like a warrior who could dance through a battlefield. Her helmet had no visible eyes, but Elias felt her watching him, a steady, unyielding presence. "That's General Virea Saul," Kian whispered, noticing Elias's look. "She's their top commander. Doesn't talk much, if at all." Elias raised an eyebrow. "She's impressive." "Careful," Kian said with a smirk. "Remember what I said about compliments." Elias chuckled under his breath, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Virea was sizing him up. He tried to focus on Corvin's speech, but his mind kept drifting back to her. There was something magnetic about her, even through the armor and silence. When the meeting paused for a break, the human stood, stretching and grabbing coffee from a nearby table. The Elari stayed seated, except for Virea. She rose smoothly, like water flowing upward, and moved to a corner of the room. An attendant approached her, carrying a small device, and began to remove her helmet with careful precision. Elias, holding a cup of lukewarm coffee, turned just as the helmet came off. Virea's face was stunning. Smooth, silvery skin, high cheekbones, and long, pointed ears that curved elegantly. Her eyes were molten gold, swirling like liquid fire, but it was her presence that hit him hardest. The armor accentuated her strength and grace, every line of it designed to highlight her form. She looked like a sculpture come to life, powerful and captivating. Before he could stop himself, the words slipped out, soft but clear. "General Virea, I have to say, your armor is incredible. It's like it was made to show off your strength and elegance." The room went dead silent. Elias froze, his coffee cup halfway to his mouth. Every head turned, human and Elari alike. Corvin's face turned red, like he was about to explode. Kian's jaw dropped, and one of the Elari's armor made a sharp click, like a warning shot. Virea stood still, her golden eyes locked on Elias, unreadable but intense, like she was staring into his soul. Elias's heart pounded. He hadn't meant to say it out loud, let alone in front of everyone. It was just a reflex, a polite comment, or so he thought. He tried to recover, forcing a nervous laugh. It's a great design. Very functional. Not that I'm, implying anything else. No one laughed. Not even Kian, who usually found everything funny. The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. Virea didn't move, didn't blink, just kept staring. Then, slowly, she tilted her head, a tiny gesture that somehow felt like it carried 1,000 meanings. Without a word, she turned, her attendant placing the helmet back on, and she glided out of the room, the other Elari following like shadows. The meeting ended abruptly after that. Corvin stormed over to Elias, his voice low but furious. "Crane, what was that? You just complimented an Elari general's appearance in the middle of a trade talk." Elias rubbed the back of his neck. "It was a reflex, sir. I meant it as a compliment on their tech." Corvin pinched the bridge of his nose. "You don't get it, do you? The Elari take words seriously. You might have just caused a diplomatic incident." Kian, try not to laugh, chimed in. "He's not wrong, Elias. In Elari culture, praising someone's form, like their strength or elegance, can mean something personal. Like really personal." Elias's eyes widened. "Wait, what? Are you saying I just proposed or something?" Kian shrugged, grinning now. "Maybe not proposed, but you definitely sent a signal. Good luck explaining that one." Elias groaned, slumping into a chair. "Great. My first day. And I've already messed up with the Elari general." Corvin shook his head. "Fix this, Crane. I don't care how, but fix it before it ruins the deal." As the human delegation left the room, Elias couldn't shake the image of Virea's golden eyes or the weight of her gaze. He had no idea what he'd just started, but one thing was clear. This mission was about to get a lot more complicated. Elias sat in the human delegation's cramped briefing room, his head in his hands. The faint hum of Argarosa's ventilation system buzzed like an annoying mosquito, matching the chaos in his mind. He'd been up half the night replaying the moment he'd complimented General Virea Saul's armor. "Strength and elegance," he'd said, thinking it was polite. Now, thanks to Kian, he knew it might have sounded like he was hitting on an Elari general, or worse, proposing some kind of cosmic commitment. Kian lounged across from him, munching on a protein bar that smelled suspiciously like burnt rubber. "You look like you just found out you're allergic to gravity," he said, grinning. "Still freaking out about Virea?" Elias groaned. "Freaking out? Kian, I might have just tanked the trade deal. Corvin's ready to ship me back to Earth in a cargo crate." Kian chuckled, crumbs falling onto his uniform. "Relax, man. It's not like you declared war. You just maybe implied you're into her. In Elari terms, that's a big deal." Elias leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "A big deal how? Like, I owe her a space cow now, or we're soul bonded for eternity." Kian tossed the protein bar wrapper into a recycler. "Not quite eternity, but close. The Elari have this thing called a form bond. Praising someone's strength or elegance can mean you're admiring their essence. Mind, body, spirit, the whole package. It's like saying, 'Hey, I see your soul. Let's connect.'" Elias's eyes widened. "Connect? I was talking about her armor. Tech, design, craftsmanship." Kian smirked. "Yeah, well, the Elari don't do casual compliments. Their culture's all about intent. You say something, they assume you mean it deeply." Elias rubbed his temples. "Great. So, I accidentally flirted with their top commander. How do I fix this?" Kian stood, stretching. "You could try talking to her, but good luck getting a word out of Virea. She's what they call a voxhorn. Takes a vow of silence to make her words more powerful. Barely speaks, even to her own people." Elias sighed. "Perfect. I've got to apologize to someone who doesn't talk. Any bright ideas?" Kian tapped his chin, pretending to think. "Well, you could learn some Elari customs. Show respect. Prove you're not just a clueless human. They got a library wing here with cultural archives. Or you could send a gift. Elari love symbolic gestures." Elias perked up. "A gift? Like what? Flowers? Chocolate?" Kian laughed so hard he nearly choked. "Flowers? Man, you're on a space station, not a rom-com set. Elari gifts are specific. Crystals, woven threads, stuff with meaning. But you gotta be careful. Pick the wrong one, and you might say something worse than elegance. Determined to fix his mess, Elias headed to the station's cultural library, a quiet wing with glowing walls that pulsed faintly, like the station was breathing. The archives were a mix of holographic displays and physical artifacts, each tagged with explanations in multiple languages. Elias scrolled through a guide on Elari customs, his head spinning from terms like soul threads and gesture protocols. He wasn't sure if he was learning or just getting more confused. After an hour, he found a section on gifts. One item caught his eye, a small, shimmering crystal called a lumine shard. The guide said it symbolized respect and clarity, perfect for smoothing over misunderstandings. Elias figured it was safe enough. He asked the station assistant to source one, and by the next morning, a tiny, glowing crystal arrived in a sleek case, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. Feeling hopeful, Elias drafted a message to go with it. General Virea, I meant no disrespect. This is a token of my admiration for your leadership and culture. Elias Crane. He kept it short, hoping the crystal would do the talking. He handed the package to an Elari attendant, a young figure in pale armor who nodded silently and glided away. Elias felt a flicker of relief. Maybe this would clear things up, and he could focus on the trade deal without Corvin breathing down his neck. But by midday, things went sideways. Kian burst into the briefing room, eyes wide. Elias, what did you do? Elias frowned, setting down his coffee. What? I sent Virea a crystal. The guide said it means respect. Kian slapped his forehead. A lumine shard? Dude, that's not just respect. In some Elari contexts, it's a pledge of loyalty, like you're offering to serve her or bond with her. Did you read the fine print? Elias's stomach dropped. Fine print? It said clarity and respect. Kian pulled up a hollow guide on his tablet, zooming in on a footnote. Yeah, but it also says, use cautiously in diplomatic settings, as it may imply deeper intent. You basically doubled down on your compliment. Elias slumped in his chair, his face pale. So what? Now she thinks I'm proposing again. Kian tried not to laugh. Maybe not proposing, but you're definitely sending mixed signals. The Elari are probably debating whether you're a bold diplomat or a lovesick idiot. Elias buried his face in his hands. I'm so dead. Corvin's gonna fire me into the sun. Kian patted his shoulder. Look, it's not over yet. Virea hasn't responded, which means she's not offended, probably. You might still have a chance to explain yourself. Elias looked up, desperate. How? She doesn't talk, and I keep digging myself deeper. Kian grinned. You're gonna have to face her, man. The Elari respect directness, even if it's messy. Find her, say you're sorry, and pray she doesn't take your crystal as a marriage vow. Elias nodded, though his stomach churned. He had no idea how to approach Virea, especially after this latest blunder. But he couldn't let the trade deal, or his career, crash and burn. As he left the room, he caught a glimpse of himself in a reflective wall, disheveled hair, tired eyes, and a badge that suddenly felt too heavy. He muttered to himself, one compliment, one crystal, and I'm already in over my head. Nice work, Elias. Somewhere in the Elari wing, Virea held the lumine shard, its glow reflecting in her golden eyes. She tilted her head, a faint curve at the corner of her mouth. Whatever she was thinking, Elias was about to find out. Elias paced outside the Elari wing, his palms sweaty despite the station's cool air. The lumine shard fiasco still haunted him, and Kian's warning about pledging loyalty echoed in his head. He'd been summoned to meet General Virea Saul, not for a reprimand, thankfully, but to assist with a diplomatic task. Ambassador Corvin had made it clear. This was Elias's chance to fix his mess and keep the trade deal on track. No pressure, right? The Elari wing was quieter than the human quarters, its walls shimmering with soft violet light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The air smelled faintly of ozone and something sweet like alien sizzle of spice. Elias adjusted his badge, trying to look calm, but his heart raced. He wasn't sure what to expect from Virea. Would she be angry about the crystal? Or worse, Would she think he was some lovesick fool? An Elari attendant, clad in pale armor, appeared and gestured for him to follow. Elias trailed behind, his boots echoing in the silent corridor. The walls seemed to shift, their patterns moving like liquid, making him feel like he was walking through a living thing. He shivered. Elari tech was way beyond anything humans had. The attendant led him to a small chamber, its walls curved like petals, glowing with faint blue light. Virea stood near a levitating table, her dark armor catching the glow like a polished blade. Her helmet was off, revealing her silvery skin, high cheekbones, and those molten gold eyes. Her long, pointed ears twitched slightly, and Elias couldn't help but notice how her armor hugged her frame, strong, graceful, like a panther ready to pounce. He swallowed hard, remembering his compliment about her strength and elegance. "General Virea," Elias said, giving a stiff nod. "Thank you for seeing me." She tilted her head, her expression unreadable, and pointed to a seat across the table. Elias sat, feeling like a kid called to the principal's office. The table held 2 small bowls of what looked like glowing blue paste and a pair of sleek utensils. Was this a meal? A test? He had no clue. Virea spoke, her voice low and smooth, like a distant melody. "You are here to review trade proposals. We begin with resource allocation." Elias blinked, surprised she was getting straight to business. "Right, of course. I've got the human proposals here." He pulled up a hollow tablet, displaying charts of mineral exports and tech exchanges. As he talked, Virea listened, her eyes locked on him, intense but not hostile. It was unnerving, but he pushed through, explaining Earth's needs and offers. To his surprise, Virea responded, her words precise. "Your proposal lacks clarity on energy distribution. Elari require stable power for our constructs." Elias nodded, jotting notes. "Fair point. We can prioritize solar relays if you share your grid specs." They went back and forth, debating details with a rhythm that felt natural. Virea's silence wasn't cold. It was focused, like every word she chose was deliberate. Elias found himself relaxing, even enjoying the challenge. She wasn't just a statue. She was sharp, strategic, and, well, kind of impressive. When they paused, Virea gestured to the bowls. "Eat. It is customary." Elias hesitated, then scooped up some blue paste. It tasted like sweet mint with a zing that tingled his tongue. "This is different," he said, smiling. "What is it?" "Caliph paste," Virea said. "It sustains and sharpens the mind." Elias took another bite. "We could use this on Earth. Our coffee's more like a heart attack in a cup." Virea's lips curved slightly, not a full smile but close. "Your coffee is chaotic, like your people." Elias laughed, nearly choking on the paste. "Chaotic? That's one way to put it. We're more like a bunch of kids trying to figure out the galaxy." Her eyes softened, just a fraction. "Yet you persist. It is intriguing." Elias felt a warmth in his chest. Was she actually warming up to him? He decided to test the waters. "About the crystal I sent, I didn't mean to offend. I just wanted to show respect." Virea studied him, her gaze piercing. The lumine shard was unexpected. In our culture, it implies loyalty, a bond of service. Elias winced. "Yeah, I messed up. I thought it meant sorry for being an idiot." Her ears twitched, and that faint smile returned. "You're not an idiot. You are unscripted. It is rare." Elias grinned, feeling bolder. "Unscripted is my middle name." "Well, actually, it's Michael, but you get the idea." Virea tilted her head, processing his joke. "You speak with ease, yet carry weight. It is why I requested you." Elias's jaw dropped. "You requested me? What?" "You see beyond protocol," she said simply. "It is valuable." He didn't know what to say. Her words felt like a compliment, but heavier, like they carried a truth he didn't fully grasp. Before he could respond, she stood, signaling the meeting was over. "Review the energy specs," she said. "We meet again tomorrow." Elias stood, nodding. "Got it. And, thanks for the paste. And not vaporizing me over the crystal." Virea's eyes glinted with something like amusement. "Vaporizing is inefficient." She turned, her armor shimmering as she left. Elias stood alone, the taste of Caliph paste lingering. He replayed her words, "You see beyond protocol." What did that mean? And why did his heart race when she looked at him? He wasn't falling for an Elari general, was he? Back in his quarters, he pulled up the energy specs, but his mind kept drifting to Virea, her voice, her presence, the way her armor moved with her. He shook his head. Get a grip, Elias. She's a general, not a date. But as he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting. The trade deal was important, but this connection with Virea felt bigger, like a spark that could light up the stars or burn him to ash. Elias leaned against the wall of his quarters, staring at the hollow tablet with the energy specs Virea had asked him to review. His mind wasn't on the numbers, though. It kept drifting to her. Those golden eyes, that almost smile, the way she'd called him unscripted. He shook his head, muttering, "Focus, Elias. You're here for trade, not daydreams about alien generals." A sharp knock interrupted his thoughts. Kian burst in, his usual grin replaced by a frown. "We got a problem, man. A big one." Elias set the tablet down. "Bigger than me accidentally pledging my soul to Virea?" Kian didn't laugh. "Yeah, I just overheard Ambassador Tarkov. He's the Zoltari delegate, talking to someone in the trade hub. Sounded like he's planning to tank our deal with the Elari." Elias's stomach tightened. The Zoltari were a scaly, ambitious species, and Tarkov had a reputation for playing dirty. "Tank it how? We're close to finalizing the terms." Kian paced, his voice low. "He's spreading rumors that humans are unreliable, saying we've shorted other trade partners. He's also pushing for the Elari to sign with the Zoltari instead, offering them better tech at a lower price." Elias stood, his jaw clenched. "That's a lie. Our terms are fair, and the Elari know it. Why would they buy Tarkov's story?" "They might not," Kian said, "but Tarkov's got connections. If he convinces enough delegates to doubt us, the Elari could back out. And there's more. I heard him mention tampering with the station's power grid to make it look like human tech failed." Elias's eyes widened. "Tampering? That's not just dirty. That's dangerous. Argyrosa's grid powers everything. Life support, shields, you name it." Kian nodded. "Exactly. We need to warn the Elari and stop Tarkov before he pulls it off." Elias grabbed his jacket. "Let's find Virea. If anyone can help, it's her." They headed to the Elari wing, the station's corridors buzzing with activity. Diplomats and traders moved quickly, their voices a mix of languages and clicks. Elias felt the weight of the situation pressing down. This wasn't just about his mistake anymore. The trade deal, and maybe the whole station, was at risk. At the Elari wing, an attendant led them to a command chamber, its walls lined with holographic maps of trade routes and star systems. Virea stood at the center, her dark armor gleaming under the soft light. Her helmet was off, and her golden eyes flicked to Elias, sharp and assessing. Two other Elari officers stood nearby, their silence as intense as hers. "General Virea," Elias said, catching his breath. "We've got a problem. Ambassador Tarkov's trying to sabotage the trade deal, and possibly the station." Virea's ears twitched, and she gestured for him to continue. Elias explained Tarkov's plan, with Kian chiming in about the overheard conversation. Virea listened without a word, her face unreadable, but her eyes narrowed slightly when Elias mentioned the power grid. When he finished, Virea spoke, her voice calm but firm. "This is a grave accusation. Evidence is required." Elias nodded. "I know, and we don't have much yet. But if Tarkov's tampering with the grid, we need to check the systems now. Can your tech team help?" Virea tilted her head, studying him. "You trust us to act swiftly?" Elias met her gaze, his voice steady. "I trust you, General. You've been straight with me, and I think you want this deal as much as we do." For a moment, something flickered in Virea's eyes. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. She turned to her officers and gave a series of quick gestures. They nodded and left the room, their armor clicking softly. Virea looked back at Elias. "We will investigate. You will join me." Elias blinked. "Me? I'm not exactly a tech expert." "Your perspective is unique," Virea said. It may reveal what we overlook. Kian raised an eyebrow, but stayed quiet. Elias felt a mix of pride and nerves. Virea was putting faith in him, and he wasn't about to let her down. They headed to the station's power core, a massive chamber deep in Argyros' heart. The air hummed with energy, and glowing conduits lined the walls, pulsing like veins. Elari technicians were already there, scanning panels with handheld devices. Virea led Elias to a central console, her movements precise but graceful, her armor accentuating every step. Elias tried not to stare, but it was hard. She was like a storm in human form, powerful and captivating. One technician approached, speaking in rapid Elari. Virea translated, her voice steady. They found an anomaly, a device attached to the grid. It is not ours. Elias's heart raced. Tarkov's work. Likely, Virea said. It is designed to overload the system, causing a failure. Elias cursed under his breath. If that goes off, it could knock out power across the station. We need to disable it. Virea nodded, her eyes locking with his. We will. Together. They worked side by side, Virea guiding the technicians while Elias offered ideas from his human tech knowledge. He wasn't an engineer, but he'd seen enough jury-rigged systems on Earth to know a thing or two about quick fixes. As they traced the device's wiring, their hands brushed once, sending a jolt through Elias. Virea didn't react, but her glance lingered, just for a second. The tension was palpable, not just from the sabotage, but from their closeness. Elias cracked a joke to ease it. So, is saving a space station a typical day for you? Or, am I just lucky? Virea's lips twitched, almost a smile. You are fortunate. And reckless. Elias grinned. Reckless is my specialty. They found the device, a small, blinking module hidden behind a panel. Virea's scanner confirmed it was set to overload in hours. Working fast, they isolated it, but the console sparked and an alarm blared. The station shook slightly, a warning of the grid's instability. We must act now, Virea said, her voice urgent. Follow my lead. Elias nodded, adrenaline pumping. This was no longer just about trade. It was about survival. As they raced to stop the sabotage, he realized he trusted Virea completely, and maybe, just maybe, she was starting to trust him too. The power core of Argyros thrummed with a dangerous energy, the air crackling as red warning lights flashed across the chamber. Elias's heart pounded like a drum, his hands slick with sweat as he crouched beside Virea at the central console. The sabotage device, a blinking, fist-sized module, sat exposed, its wires tangled like a nest of snakes. The station shook again, harder this time, and a blaring alarm echoed in Elias's ears. If it didn't stop the overload, Argyros could lose power, leaving everyone on board in the dark, literally. Virea's golden eyes were locked on the device, her face calm but focused, like a storm held in check. Her dark armor gleamed under the flickering lights, every movement precise as she scanned the module with a handheld device. The overload is accelerating, she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. We have minutes. Elias swallowed, his throat dry. Minutes? That's not exactly comforting. She glanced at him, a faint twitch of her lips. Comfort is not my priority. Survival is. Elias managed a shaky grin. Fair enough. Tell me what to do. Virea pointed to a panel beside the console. Open it. There are secondary relays we must disconnect to slow the surge. Elias scrambled to the panel, his fingers fumbling with the latches. The station lurched, throwing him against the wall. He cursed, grabbing the edge for balance. This thing's fighting back. Focus, Virea said, her voice cutting through the noise. She moved to his side, her armored hand steadying him for a moment. The touch was brief, but it sent a spark through Elias, grounding him despite the chaos. Together, they pried the panel open, revealing a maze of glowing conduits. Virea's scanner beeped, pinpointing the relays. There, she said, indicating 2 pulsing cables. Pull them, but not at the same time. The sequence matters. Elias nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Got it. One at a time. No pressure. He reached for the first cable, his hand shaking. The station groaned, and a shower of sparks erupted nearby, making him flinch. Virea's hand shot out, shielding him from the debris. "You are safe," she said, her voice firm but soft. "Proceed." Elias's chest tightened, not just from the danger, but from her words. She was protecting him, trusting him. He pulled the first cable, and the console's lights dimmed slightly. "One down," he said, moving to the second. Virea worked beside him, her scanner guiding their efforts. The device's blinking grew faster, a countdown to disaster. Elias's mind raced, but Virea's calm kept him anchored. He pulled the second cable, and the alarm's pitch dropped, but the device still hummed ominously. "It's not enough," Virea said, her eyes narrowing. "The core is still destabilizing. We must remove the device entirely." Elias stared at the module, its wires now sparking. "Remove it? The thing looks like it'll blow if we sneeze at it." Virea's gaze met his, steady and unflinching. "We have no choice. I will cut the primary connection. You must hold the module steady." Elias's stomach flipped. "Hold it? You're serious?" She tilted her head, a hint of amusement in her eyes. "You are reckless, Elias Crane. This should suit you." He laughed, despite the fear. "You're not wrong. Let's do this." Virea drew a small, glowing blade from her armor, its edge humming with energy. Elias gripped the module, his hands trembling but firm. The station shook again, and a pipe overhead hissed, spraying steam. Virea's blade moved with surgical precision, slicing through the wires one by one. Sparks flew, and Elias's arms burned from holding the device steady, but he didn't let go. "Almost there," Virea said, her voice tight. "Hold firm." The last wire snapped, and the module's blinking stopped. The alarms fell silent, and the station's shaking eased. Elias let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding, his hands still clutching the now inert device. "Did we do it?" Virea scanned the module, then nodded. "The overload is halted. The grid is stable." Elias slumped against the console, grinning. "We just saved the station. Not bad for a Monday." Virea's lips curved, a real smile this time, small but warm. "You performed adequately." "Adequately," Elias teased, wiping sweat from his face. "I was heroic, admit it." Her eyes sparkled, and she stepped closer, her armor brushing against him. "You were bold, Elias Crane, and brave." The air between them crackled, not from a grid, but from something else. Elias's heart raced, not from the danger, but from her closeness. Her golden eyes held his, and for a moment, the world narrowed to just them. He wanted to say something, anything, but his voice caught. Virea broke the silence, her voice softer. "You risked much to aid us." "Why?" Elias hesitated, then spoke honestly. "Because it was right. And because I trust you, Virea. You're not just a general. You're someone I want to understand." Her ears twitched, and she tilted her head, studying him. "You see me. Not my title, not my armor. It is rare." Elias's cheeks warmed. "Well, the armor's pretty great, too." She smiled again, and it was like a star igniting. Before he could say more, an Elari technician approached, reporting in rapid Elari. Virea listened, then turned to Elias. "The device bears Zoltari markings. Your suspicions about Tarkov are confirmed." Elias clenched his fists. "That snake. We need to expose him." "We will," Virea said, her voice firm. "But first, we report to the council. Together." Elias nodded, adrenaline still pumping. As they left the power core, he felt a shift. He and Virea weren't just allies now. They were partners, bound by danger and something deeper. Her presence beside him was steady, like a shield, and he knew he'd follow her anywhere. Back in the corridors, Kian met them, his eyes wide. "You guys okay?" "The station's buzzing about a near miss with the grid." "We're fine," Elias said, glancing at Virea. "Thanks to her." Virea's gaze lingered on him, and for the first time, Elias felt like he was seeing her too, not just the general, but the woman beneath the armor. Whatever came next, he was ready. Elias stood in the main council chamber of Argyros, the weight of the last few days pressing on his shoulders. The room was vast, its domed ceiling glowing with a holographic starfield that made it feel like they were floating in space. Delegates from humans, Elari, Zoltari, and other species filled the crescent-shaped table, their voices a low hum of tension. Elias adjusted his badge, trying to look calm, but his heart raced. Today was the final trade deal vote, and Tarkov's sabotage plot still hung over them like a dark cloud. Virea stood across the room, her dark armor shimmering under the lights. Her golden eyes met Elias's briefly, a silent reassurance that steadied him. They'd stopped the power grid overload together, but exposing Tarkov's scheme was the last hurdle. If they failed, the trade deal could collapse, and humanity's chance for Elari tech would slip away. Ambassador Corvin cleared his throat, addressing the council. We've reviewed the proposals. The Human-Elari trade agreement offers mutual benefits, resources for tech, stability for growth. But we've heard concerns about reliability. Elias's stomach twisted. That was Tarkov's doing. The Zoltari ambassador, a tall figure with scaly skin and sharp eyes, leaned forward. The humans have a history of inconsistent deliveries, Tarkov said smoothly. The Zoltari offer a more dependable partnership. Elias clenched his fists under the table. Liar. He glanced at Virea, who gave a subtle nod, her ears twitching. It was time. Excuse me, Ambassador Tarkov, Elias said, standing. His voice was steady, though his nerves screamed. Those claims are unfounded. In fact, we have evidence that you've been undermining this process. The room went quiet, all eyes on Elias. Tarkov's scales bristled, but he kept his cool. Evidence? That's a bold accusation, Mr. Crane. Virea stepped forward, her presence commanding silence. She held up a small hollow device, projecting an image of the sabotage module from the power core. This device, bearing Zoltari markings, was placed in Argyros's grid to cause a failure. It was meant to discredit the human delegation. Murmurs rippled through the council. Tarkov's eyes narrowed. Preposterous. That could be a forgery. Elias jumped in, his voice firm. We traced its components to a Zoltari supplier, and we have witness accounts of your conversations in the trade hub, pushing false rumors about humans. You wanted the Elari to doubt us. Tarkov scoffed, but the other delegates leaned forward, intrigued. Virea's voice cut through, calm but sharp. The Elari value truth. We have verified the evidence. Your actions threaten not only this deal, but the station's safety. The council erupted in debate, voices overlapping. Corvin, usually grumpy, gave Elias a rare nod of approval. After heated discussion, the council chair, a Vexen with waving tentacles, called for a vote. On the Human-Elari trade agreement, all in favor? Hands and appendages rose, including the Elaris. Tarkov's face darkened as the vote passed overwhelmingly. The trade deal was sealed. Elias let out a breath, relief washing over him. They'd done it. As the chamber cleared, Tarkov stormed out, his scales clicking angrily. Kian slapped Elias on the back. Nice work, man. You and Virea just took down a Galactic con artist. Elias grinned. Couldn't have done it without her. Virea approached, her armor glinting. You spoke well, Elias Crane. Your courage swayed the council. Elias rubbed his neck, sheepish. I just told the truth. You're the one who made it stick. Her lips curved, a soft smile that warmed his chest. We are effective together. Before he could respond, Corvin called him over to discuss logistics. The rest of the day was a blur of paperwork and congratulations, but Elias's mind kept drifting to Virea. The deal was done, but his time on Argyros was ending. He'd return to the Terran fleet soon, leaving her behind. The thought stung more than he expected. That evening, Virea requested his presence in the Elari wing. Elias found her in a quiet chamber, its walls shimmering like a starry night. She stood by a small table, holding a woven band etched with silver threads, a delicate, glowing bracelet. Her helmet was off, her golden eyes soft but intense. Elias, she said, her voice low, the council has proposed a joint Human-Elari research post here to strengthen our alliance. I have requested you as co-leader. Elias's jaw dropped. Me? Co-lead with you? That's huge. Virea stepped closer, her armor brushing his arm. You see beyond borders. Your actions, your recklessness, your honesty have forged trust. I wish you to stay. Elias's heart raced. This wasn't just about work. Her words, her closeness, felt personal. He took a breath, meeting her gaze. Virea, I'd be honored. But it's not just the mission. I want to stay because of you. You're incredible. Her ears twitched, and she held out the bracelet. This is a trust band, a symbol of alliance. Will you accept it? Elias took it, his fingers brushing hers. The band was warm, pulsing faintly like the Lumine shard. Yeah, I accept. And not just for the alliance. She smiled, a rare, full smile that lit up the room. Then we begin anew, Elias Crane. They stepped out of the chamber together, the station humming around them. Kian spotted them and raised an eyebrow. What's that on your wrist, lover boy? Elias laughed, holding up the band. Just a little Elari bling. Call it promise. As they walked through the corridors, the bracelet glowed softly, a reminder of their bond. Elias glanced at Virea, her graceful form beside him, and felt a surge of hope. The trade deal was just the start. Together, they'd face whatever the galaxy threw at them, misunderstandings, saboteurs, or even glowing crystals with a mind of their own. Somewhere in his quarters, the Lumine shard pulsed once, as if approving. Elias chuckled to himself. Yeah, I'm in deep now. And for the first time, he was exactly where he wanted to be.